The room went quiet as Ambassador Park faced the tall aliens of the Galactic Hegemony. This meeting should have been a great day for Earth, but things had gone wrong very fast. Commander Ji-Woo Kim stood at her post, her hand on her gun. After 20 years in the Earth Defense Force, she knew how to spot trouble in alien body language. The way the Vraxthi stood, stiff and rigid, told her everything she needed to know. Ji-Woo studied the aliens closely. The Vraxthi were nearly 8 feet tall with clear outer shells that showed the colors of their emotions flowing underneath. Right now, those colors were dark and angry. Their forearms ended in clawed hands, and the top set was twitching with irritation. "Humans do not show proper respect," said General Taiho, the lead Vraxthi. His shell turned a deep red as chemicals showing his anger flowed through his body. "You talk to your betters as if they are your friends. You tell jokes when we discuss important matters." Ambassador Park, a short woman with gray in her dark hair, tried to fix the situation. "In our culture, we be quiet." Taiho's lower arms banged against his shiny armor, making a harsh clicking sound that echoed in the large room. "The hegemony has decided. Earth is a threat to peace in the galaxy." Ji-Woo watched the other 4 Vraxthi delegates move back from the table. This was bad. She caught Ambassador Park's eye and gave a small head nod toward the door. They needed to leave now. As Ji-Woo guided the human team out of the room, her wrist device buzzed with an urgent message. She looked down and felt her stomach drop. Hegemony. Warships were moving from their spots above Earth. What should have been a peaceful meeting had just turned into the start of a war. "Ambassador, we need to move faster," Ji-Woo said quietly. Outside the meeting hall, chaos had already begun. Human staff ran in all directions. Alarms blared. The Vraxthi guards, who had been friendly earlier, now stood with weapons ready, their shells pulsing with warning colors. "What's happening?" Ambassador Park asked as they hurried down the hallway. "The hegemony ships have broken orbit. They're attacking," Ji-Woo replied, keeping her voice steady despite the fear she felt. "We need to get to the shuttle bay." A loud boom shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling. "That was close," Ji-Woo said. "They're targeting the government district first." The group turned a corner and found their path blocked by fallen debris. Ji-Woo quickly checked her device for another route. "This way," she directed, leading them down a side passage. Ambassador Park looked shell-shocked. "I don't understand. We followed all the protocols their advance team gave us." "It wasn't enough," Ji-Woo said as they ran. "The Vraxthi value hierarchy, above all else. Our casual approach was seen as disrespect, not friendliness." They reached a security door and Ji-Woo placed her hand on the scanner. The door slid open to reveal a small command center, where Earth defense officers worked at screens showing the battle above. "Commander Kim," a young officer called out, "the President is asking for you." Ji-Woo nodded and turned to the ambassador. "You'll be safe here. I need to coordinate our defense." On the main screen, red dots representing hegemony warships surrounded Earth. Blue dots showing Earth's defense ships were far fewer. Ji-Woo touched a control panel, and the President's face appeared on a side screen. "Commander Kim, what can you tell me about their tactics? You've studied the Vraxthi longer than anyone." "They value order and submission, Madam President. This attack is meant to force us to surrender quickly," Ji-Woo explained. "They expect us to follow their rules of war, which means formal challenges and organized battles." "And if we don't?" Ji-Woo allowed herself a small smile. "Then we might have a chance. The Vraxthi don't adapt well to chaos. They fight by their rulebook. We need to throw that book away." The building shook again as another explosion hit nearby. "I'm authorizing Defense Plan Omega," the President said. "You'll lead our forces at New Horizon Colony. It's likely to be their first ground target." Ji-Woo straightened her back. "Yes, Madam President." As the screen went dark, Ji-Woo looked back at the battle display. Earth's first meeting with aliens had gone as badly as it could. Now they faced a war against an enemy with better technology and more ships. But the Vraxthi didn't understand humans. They didn't know how dangerous humans could be when backed into a corner. They didn't know that humans had one advantage the rigid Vraxthi lacked. Humans could adapt, improvise and overcome. And soon, the Vraxthi would learn just how big a mistake they had made. 3 weeks had passed since the first attack. Commander Jiwoo Kim now stood at the edge of Sangcheon Pass, on the colony world of New Horizon. The narrow mountain path was the only way through to the main settlement, where thousands of civilians still waited for evacuation ships. Jiwoo looked out at the valley below. Dust clouds rose from the ground as massive HFY war machines, tall walking tanks that looked like giant insects, moved forward. The early morning sun glinted off their metal shells. "They're moving faster than yesterday," said Lieutenant Do-hyun, a young officer with a thin scar across his cheek. He handed Jiwoo a pair of field glasses. "They've figured out our artillery patterns," Jiwoo said as she studied the enemy forces. "They're learning." Inside the mountain command post, a 3D map showed the battle situation. Red dots for Vraxthi forces surrounded the blue area that showed the human defensive position. The red dots were getting closer every hour. "They're flanking position 4, Lieutenant Do-hyun's voice came through the radio. Jiwoo rushed back, outside as the mountain shook from enemy fire. Through her glasses she could see Vraxthi walkers climbing the lower slopes of the eastern ridge. Jiwoo returned to the map table, where her 5 remaining officers waited for orders. The display showed the truth clearly. 8,000 Vraxthi troops against their 400 defenders. And behind them, the colony settlement with 12,000 civilians, only half of whom had been evacuated. The next transport ships arrive. In 12 hours, Jiwoo told her team. "We need to hold this pass until then, whatever it takes." Captain Minji, the medical officer, shook her head. "We've lost 60 people since yesterday. At this rate, we hold," Jiwoo said firmly. "Every civilian who escapes is worth it." The ground beneath them suddenly shook harder than before. This wasn't artillery fire. Something big had landed in the valley. Jiwoo grabbed her glasses and ran outside. A massive Vraxthi command ship had touched down at the valley entrance. It was at least 5 times larger than their other vessels, with glowing symbols on its hull that marked it as belonging to High Command. "That's General Taeho's personal carrier," she said to Do-hyun, who had joined her at the observation point. "He's come to finish this himself." A moment later, a voice boomed across the valley, so loud it seemed to make the air itself vibrate. "Humans of Earth Defense, your position is surrounded. Your reinforcements will not arrive. Surrender now, and your deaths will be merciful." The voice belonged to Supreme General Taeho. Even through the translation, his tone carried the absolute certainty of someone used to being obeyed without question. Jiwoo looked back at the command post where her officers watched with tense faces. They had fought bravely, but everyone knew the truth. They couldn't hold much longer. Then Jiwoo remembered something from her studies of Vraxthi culture. Their rigid hierarchy made them strong, but predictable. They had strict rules for everything, even warfare. An idea came to her, a crazy, desperate idea. "Keep our forces in position," she told Do-hyun. "I'm going to try something." Jiwoo walked out onto the forward observation platform, a narrow ledge jutting from the mountainside, fully visible to the Vraxthi forces below. Her officers shouted for her to come back, but she ignored them. She activated her suit's external speakers, which would project her voice across the valley. The Vraxthi would expect a surrender speech or perhaps a defiant last stand statement. Instead, Jiwoo did something that no military training manual would ever recommend. She laughed, not a nervous chuckle or forced brave face, but real, genuine laughter that came from deep in her chest and echoed across the battlefield. She laughed like someone who had just heard the funniest joke in the universe. The sound carried across the valley, bouncing off the mountains, growing louder with each echo. Jiwoo kept laughing, even as tears formed in her eyes from the effort. Below, the Vraxthi advance stopped instantly. The walking tanks froze in place. The ground troops who had been moving up the slopes stopped moving. Complete silence fell over the battlefield. Even Jiwoo's own officers stared at her in shock. Lieutenant Do-hyun's mouth hung open. "Commander?" he finally whispered. "What are you doing?" Jiwoo wiped tears from her eyes, still grinning. "I'm buying us time." Down in the valley, Confusion spread through the Vraxthi forces. Their neat formations wavered as soldiers turned to each other, unsure what to do. Near the command carrier, General Taiho watched the human commander through magnification devices. His outer shell, normally a confident purple, now pulsed with uncertain blue patterns. "What is happening?" he demanded of his advisors. "Why does the human laugh when facing death?" None of them had an answer. In Vraxthi culture, laughing in the face of certain defeat was unthinkable. It made no sense. And that was exactly why Jiwoo had done it. General Taiho stood in his command center surrounded by glowing screens showing the battle. His forearms were crossed in front of his chest as he watched the human commander on the mountain. "What is happening?" he demanded. The human was laughing loudly, the sound carrying across the valley. "Why does she laugh when she should surrender?" His second-in-command, Suho, moved nervously at his side. Suho's shell was flickering between blue and gray, showing his worry. "The human laughs at death," Suho said quietly. "This is forbidden knowledge." General Taiho's upper arms twitched. In Vraxthi belief, only those who had seen beyond death could laugh when facing it. Their holy books said that those who laugh at death have dangerous power that could spread to others. "Is this some human weapon we don't know about?" Taiho asked. "Unknown, Supreme General," Suho replied. "Our studies of humans never showed this behavior." Taiho watched as the human commander continued to laugh, the sound echoing through their communication systems. He felt a strange chill pass through his body. "Order the front line to pull back," he finally said. "We need to understand this before we continue." Across the valley, Vraxthi troops began to retreat from their advanced positions. Walking tanks turned around. Soldiers who had been climbing the mountain slopes moved back down. Up on the mountain, Lieutenant Dohyun stared at Commander Jiwoo as she returned to the command post. "They're pulling back," he said in amazement. "What did you do?" Jiwoo's mind was racing with ideas. She hadn't expected such a strong reaction from the Vraxthi. "Something about my laughter disturbed them," she said slowly. "During my studies of their culture, I read that they have strict rules about behavior in battle. They expect enemies to either fight seriously or surrender with dignity." "So laughing confused them?" Dohyun asked. "More than confused," Jiwoo said. "Did you see how quickly they retreated? I think they're actually afraid of it." She thought for a moment, then reached for the communication system. She pressed the button that would let her speak to all units under her command. "All units, this is Commander Kim. I have a new tactic. When engaging the enemy, I want you to laugh. Loudly, not just small chuckles. Full, hearty laughter. This is not a joke. I repeat, when fighting the Vraxthi, laugh as you attack." The channel was silent for a moment before responses started coming in. "Commander, did I hear that right?" asked one squad leader. "You want us to laugh during combat?" another asked. "Exactly," Jiwoo confirmed. "Trust me on this. The Vraxthi are disturbed by it." As the sun set behind the mountains, darkness fell over the battlefield. This was when Jiwoo planned to strike back. The Vraxthi had pulled back, giving them a chance to take action. She chose 20 small teams of soldiers. Each team had 5 people. Their mission was simple but dangerous. Sneak down the mountain in the darkness and attack specific Vraxthi positions. "Remember your orders," Jiwoo told the team leaders before they left. "Strike fast, hit their communication equipment if possible, and laugh while you do it." The soldiers looked at each other, still unsure about the laughing part, but they trusted their commander. As the teams moved out into the night, Jiwoo watched from her position. The first team reached a Vraxthi outpost 30 minutes later. Through her night vision glasses, she saw her soldiers surround the position. Then it began. Human laughter cut through the night as the team attacked. Even from a distance, Jiwoo could see the Vraxthi soldiers' reaction. They weren't just surprised, they were terrified. Their shells flashed bright warning colors, and instead of fighting back in their usual organized way, they scattered. Similar reports came in from other teams. Everywhere the same thing happened. Vraxthi soldiers breaking formation at the sound of human laughter, their usual tight coordination falling apart. One team leader reported back, "Commander, it's working better than we could have imagined. They're not just confused, they're afraid. 3 of them abandoned their weapons and ran when we started laughing." Inside the Vraxthi command carrier, chaos was spreading. Officers reported the strange attacks from all sectors. Battle screens showed their neat formations breaking down as small human teams struck from the darkness. "The humans are using psychological warfare," Suho told General Taiho. "They're targeting our communication units with small teams. But the effect on our troops? It's unprecedented." Taiho watched a video feed from the battlefield. Human soldiers moved through a Vraxthi camp laughing as they disabled equipment. The Vraxthi troops, normally so disciplined, were retreating in disorder. "How can laughter cause such fear?" he demanded. An officer in charge of religious matters stepped forward. "Supreme General, in our oldest teachings, those who laugh in the face of death are said to have seen beyond the veil of mortality. Our soldiers believe these humans have forbidden knowledge, that they know something about death that we do not." Taiho's shell darkened with concern. This was no longer just a military problem. If word spread that humans had knowledge that frightened even Vraxthi warriors, the effects could reach beyond this battle. By midnight, Jiwoo's strategy had changed the battlefield. What had been a desperate last stand was now something else entirely. They were still outnumbered, but they had found an unexpected weapon. Human laughter in the face of death was more powerful than any gun against the Vraxthi. Morning light crept over the mountains of New Horizon as Commander Jiwoo Kim studied the battle maps. The night's operations had changed everything. Her small force had managed to push back the much larger Vraxthi army in several key areas. "Give me the latest reports," Jiwoo said to her staff. Captain Hyun, her tactical officer, pointed to the glowing map. "The enemy is acting strangely, Commander. Their usual formation discipline is breaking down. Look here and here," he said, pointing to several areas. "They retreat from our laughing soldiers but hold position against teams that don't laugh." Jiwoo leaned closer to the map, her tired eyes narrowing with interest. "They're truly afraid of the laughter, not just confused by it." "It seems so," Hyun agreed. "We've recorded their communications. Their field commanders are asking for guidance on how to fight against what they call the death sound." A slow smile spread across Jiwoo's face. "Then we need to give them more of it." She turned to her communications officer. "Broadcast on all frequencies. I want laughter across every channel they monitor." The young officer looked confused. "You want us to transmit laughter?" "Exactly. Get some of our people to record themselves laughing. Different types of laughter. Mix them together. I want it playing on every frequency the Vraxthi might be using." Within an hour, the air was filled with the sound of human laughter. It poured from speakers around their defensive positions and was transmitted on all communication channels. The effect on the battlefield was immediate and dramatic. Reports flowed in from the front lines, Vraxthi troops abandoning positions, communication breakdowns between their units, and in some cases, entire squads retreating without orders. Meanwhile, aboard his command carrier, General Taiho faced the greatest challenge of his long military career. The battle that should have been a simple victory had turned into something he couldn't understand. "Supreme General, I have completed my analysis," said Youngsu, his intelligence officer. Youngsu's shell was a pale blue, showing his deep concern. Taiho gestured for him to continue. "The humans possess no death magic," Youngsu explained, showing data on a screen. "We've analyzed their biological responses. Their laughter is a natural function, not a weapon or spell as some troops believe." "Then why do they laugh in the face of death?" Taiho demanded. "They use humor as psychological armor," Youngsu said. "When humans feel fear, they can choose to laugh at it. This doesn't remove the fear, but it helps them face it. They acknowledge fear exists, then neutralize it with laughter." Taiho's outer carapace darkened with worry. This concept was alien to Vraxthi psychology. In their society, fear was to be respected and used as a guide. One either faced fear with solemn courage or retreated from it. The idea of laughing at fear itself was deeply disturbing. A species that can laugh at destruction cannot be defeated through conventional warfare, Taiho said quietly. Our entire battle doctrine is based on exploiting an enemy's fear. How do we fight an enemy who turns fear into strength? Youngsu had no answer. Across the battlefield, the situation grew worse for the Vraxthi. Unit after unit reported the same disturbing phenomenon. Human soldiers charging their positions while laughing loudly, treating the shadow of death as a companion rather than an enemy. A Vraxthi commander named Jamo reported from the eastern flank. They walk into our fire zones laughing. When one falls, the others laugh louder. We cannot understand this behavior, and the troops are refusing to hold position against it. For the Vraxthi, who had built their entire military doctrine on exploiting fear, the humans presented an insurmountable problem. How could they defeat an enemy who responded to death with laughter? Back at the human command post, Jiwoo received news that made her heart leap with hope. Commander, Lieutenant Do-Yun reported, our scouts say the Vraxthi are pulling their heavy weapons back. They're repositioning almost a mile from their previous line. Jiwoo couldn't believe it. They're retreating? All of them? Not a full retreat, Do-Hyun clarified. More like they're regrouping, but they've given up all the ground they gained yesterday. Captain Minji, who had been treating wounded soldiers non-stop, joined them. The civilians are almost all evacuated. Now, 2 more hours and the last transport ships will be away. For the first time in days, Jiwoo allowed herself to feel real hope. What had started as a desperate last stand might actually end in victory, all because of laughter. She stepped outside to look at the battlefield below. Where Vraxthi war machines had been advancing yesterday, there was now empty space. In the distance, she could see their forces regrouping, their once perfect formations now ragged and disorganized. Should we press the advantage? Do-Hyun asked, coming to stand beside her. Jiwoo considered this. They were still greatly outnumbered, and pushing too hard might force the Vraxthi to overcome their new fear. No, she decided. Let them retreat. Our mission is to protect the evacuation, not win the war in one battle. As the day progressed, the Vraxthi continued to pull back. Their communications, which the humans had been monitoring, showed confusion and disagreement among their leaders. By sunset, a message came through on an open channel. It was from General Taiho himself, commander of the human forces. His translated voice said, I request a meeting to discuss terms. Jiwoo looked at her officers in surprise. The mighty Vraxthi were asking for talks after just 1 day of psychological warfare. Should we trust them? Do-Hyun asked. Jiwoo smiled. No, but I'm very curious to hear what they have to say. She picked up the communicator to respond, knowing that the course of the war had changed. The humans had found a weapon more powerful than any in the Vraxthi arsenal, the ability to laugh in the face of fear itself. 3 days after the battle changed, Commander Jiwoo Kim sat at a plain metal table in a tent set up between the two armies. Across from her sat General Taiho, the supreme leader of the Vraxthi forces. His forearms were folded in front of him, and his clear outer shell showed swirling patterns of blue and purple, the colors of caution and deep thought. 2 guards stood behind each leader. The air in the tent was cool and still. Outside, both human and Vraxthi soldiers watched each other carefully across the neutral ground. Explain this power, Taiho said, his translated voice flat and direct. How do your soldiers laugh when facing death? Jiwoo looked at the alien general. She knew her answer would matter not just for this battle, but perhaps for the future of human and Vraxthi relations. We laugh not. This is why we could not understand, Taiho said. In our society, one either faces fear with solemn courage or retreats from it. The idea of transforming fear through laughter, we have nothing like this. As the meeting continued, Vraxthi, experts on human behavior, joined them. They asked many questions, and Jiwoo answered honestly. She explained jokes, gallows humor, and how laughter can bring people together in hard times. Your species is unsettling, Taiho finally admitted, but perhaps worthy of study rather than extinction. It was the first hint that peace might be possible. By the end of the meeting, both leaders had agreed to stop fighting while they worked toward a more formal agreement. 3 days later, they met again at the same spot. This time, more officials came from both sides. Together, they signed what would become known as the Sangcheon Pass Accords, the first peaceful agreement between Earth and the galactic hegemony. The key points were simple. Earth would join the hegemony, but with special status that respected human cultural differences. The Vraxthi would withdraw their forces from human colonies, and most importantly, both species would begin a cultural exchange program to better understand each other. As Jiwoo watched Taiho sign the document, she thought about how strange the path to peace had been. A simple act of laughter had changed everything. 2 weeks later, Commander Jiwoo Kim returned to Earth. Crowds greeted her ship when it landed. The president herself came to place a medal on Jiwoo's uniform. "You saved not just New Horizon," the president said, "but possibly all of humanity." Reporters asked Jiwoo many questions. How had she known the Vraxthi would fear laughter? What was it like to negotiate with the enemy general? Did she think the peace would last? To all questions, Jiwoo gave the same basic answer. "I didn't win through clever strategy or superior weapons. Sometimes understanding each other is the most powerful force of all." In the years that followed, Jiwoo often visited schools to tell children about the Battle of Sangcheon Pass. She never emphasized her own role or made it sound like a typical war story. The real victory, she would tell them, came not from fighting but from the simple act of laughter in the face of darkness, a uniquely human strength that even the mightiest alien generals could not understand. The Vraxthi and humans continued to find each other strange and sometimes difficult to understand. But they never went to war again. Both sides remembered the lesson of Sangcheon Pass, that victory can come not from weapons, but from taking the time to understand how others see the world. Diplomatic historians would later mark it as the moment when understanding replaced fear, all because a human commander had chosen to laugh when surrender seemed the only option. The end.